Hello and welcome back to my channel and to my Michael Powell retrospective. And today we're talking about The Small Back Room, a very neglected, marginalised, seldom visited film from Michael Powell's oeuvre, rather like The Small Back Room of the title in a way. What's happened here? We've had all these technicolor glories of Black Narcissus and Matter of Life and Death and The Red Shoes, these wonderful, vibrant, colourful films, and suddenly we go back to black and white, quietly going around these dark, grim London streets with only the tolling of Big Ben in the background. What's happened here? It's like we've gone backwards. It's like we've gone backwards to those early war films of Michael Powell and Pressburger. And in the casting, with people like Leslie Banks appearing, it often feels like we've gone back to the quota quickies of the 1930s. Partly what's happened here is the fallout from the Red Shoes. Powell and Pressburger kind of fell out with Rank and went back to Alexander Korda, so they were in a sense going back. But this is also Powell and Pressburger revisiting the war. Now remember, we'd sort of left the war behind us and we'd gone into these kind of technical, lurid fantasies of Black Narcissus and the Red Shoes. But then, before the success of the Red Shoes had really rippled back into the UK, Powell revisited the war, but this time not as a propagandist. Oh no. This time he was taking revenge. This time we go back to the London of the war, and it's not in sort of this beautiful Jack Cardiff cinematography with lovely colours and lovely sense of hope and Englishness. No, it's crowded, it's dark in the blackout, it's full of people rushing about. It's a very cramped, awkward, interior London. It's a London of backbiting civil servants who have meetings in rooms where they can't really hear each other because there's a drill outside and they're all sort of infighting to get more money and to get more kudos. This is a place where the film is about bomb experts. It's about sort of a research team, right? Looking at sort of scientific projects for the army. And the film starts and you go to this building and it says there's signs, supplies, all this. The lowest sign, just written in ink, is this research centre. That's its status. Then you walk through this old building, you come through, and you see this old house surrounded by grim tower blocks. So Powell sets this film in this kind of old, rickety, eccentric, sort of, lost place, like a small back room. The whole department is like a small back room in this new modern grim world. And there's one guy, Cyril Cusack's character, is working in an office where people are walking over his head. He's literally down. So the heroes of this film, I've seen some reviews call them backroom boys, but really these are intense research scientists helping England win the war, but they're treated almost like dirt. This is Powell's bitter revenge on the Second World War. Very few films have really shown the reality of the Second World War. Away from sort of Where Eagles Dare style, flag waving and the propaganda of the war. Powell went back and showed it as it really was. He was taking revenge to a certain extent on the Ministry of Information and the producers of his films who didn't really understand Powell and Pressburger's ambitions. Right, so that many civil servants that appear in this film are avatars of those producers, but he's also showing the truth of England, that it wasn't run by, Jolly M and great, strapping soldiers full of daring do. It was run by crappy civil servants, pen pushers, career politicians. There's one extraordinary shot in the film where David Farrer's character goes into this upper class restaurant in London. And Powell does a pan across bowler hat, umbrella, bowler hat, umbrella, bowler hat. This is the people who are in charge, the petty bureaucrats. And I like to think, it probably isn't true, but I like to think that shot harks back to Humphrey Jennings' brilliant short, Listen to Britain. This is a 14-minute short, one of the greatest short films ever made, certainly one of the greatest British films ever made. And what it is, it's a representation of Britain and what Britain is in 14 minutes, purely through sound and image. There's no dialogue. It's a sort of impressionistic portrait of Britain. And in one shot of this, Jennings shoots a coat rack with long coats, gas masks, tin hats. A portrait of, the everyday world of people living through the Blitz. And I like to think that, in a way that Powell's shot of all these bowler hats and these umbrellas in this genteel restaurant is a portrait of what he saw as the truth of London at that time. It's a very bitter film. And perhaps that's why people don't like it. What kind of film is this? It's actually a departure for Powell and Pressburger, and it's quite unusual in their filmography. It's a character study. It's a very interior film. Unlike Powell's films, which are very expansive and exciting and adventurous, this is a film going into the mind of one man, a neurotic, difficult, recovering alcoholic, someone who's a victim. He's got a wooden leg. Well, he's got an artificial leg. He's got a prosthetic leg, and he's full of demons, And we're going to go into his mind and his world. So it's a film of intimacy, and it's a film of greater maturity from Powell and Pressburger. They sort of lose their whimsicality and go inwards to study a man who's in a very difficult place in his life. And suddenly, despite all his neuroses, it's a bit like, The Lost Weekend with Ray Milland, the study of an alcoholic. But this alcoholic has got to try and defend England from a new kind of weapon devised by the Nazis, which is this kind of strange canister that goes off at any time. They don't know what sets it off, this new bomb. So everything in the film is about feeding into this intimate character study. So the usual sort of flamboyance and extravagance of Powell is pushed to one side. There's only one scene in the film that is typical of Powell, when David Farrer's character has this dream of this sort of gigantic bottle. His craving for alcohol is represented as this gigantic bottle falling on him. It's actually the weakest scene in the film. The best scenes in the film are the films that take us into this man's intimate world with his wife, played by Kathleen Byron. And actually this new crowded, discomforting London, it accentuates on these two lovers trying to keep together, trying to keep their mind together, trying to keep their love going in this crazy, chaotic, world of, wartime London. Lead roles are given to David Farrer and Kathleen Byron. So it's almost like Sister Ruth, and the guy from Black Narcissus, who almost became lovers in that film. This is what they would have been like if they were lovers. Except that here, the David Farrer character is softer and more wounded, and more in tune with his own woundedness, unlike his counterpart in Black Narcissus, and Kathleen Byron is stronger. It's so nice to see Kathleen Byron given a leading role like this. She was an angel in Matter of Life and Death. She was a demon in Black Narcissus. Here, she is one of Powell and Pressburger's most likeable and most human female characters. So this character study builds to the moment where this man must face up to his demons, and he must defuse this bomb which has landed on this shingle beach, this spit going out into the sea. What's interesting about how Powell treats this is it's not actually a very suspenseful scene. The night before David Farrer has given in to his demons and got drunk, he's massively hungover. But the film doesn't accentuate this. In fact, a bit like Oliver Reed used to be when he was an actor, he used to get flat out drunk the night before. When he came on set, he was word perfect and pitch perfect. And Farrer is the same. His character is the same. Powell doesn't go for the obvious thing there, the obvious melodrama. In fact, he pulls back to documentary. And the whole scene of the defusing of the bomb is very meticulous and methodical, rather like the scene in One of Our Aircraft is Missing. Do you remember that opening scene where Powell methodically shows what it's like to do a bombing mission over Germany and try and come back? It shows that Powell is not just a fantasist and whimsical. There is actually a serious documentarian there who is interested in the realities of the war. Also, watch out for the extraordinary scene where he and a very young Michael Gough, they go to this scene where a young soldier has handled one of these bombs and has been blown up and is dying. Watch the seriousness, the intentness, the way that Powell pulls the drama down in something extremely intense and difficult to watch. So Powell is not just this, fantasist, whimsical director. He can actually be a very serious, very punishing director. At the end, this is not a film of suspense. It's a film of psychological suspense. Can this man redeem himself? Can he come back to who he is? That's why I really dislike the American title of the film, Hour of Glory. It's not about Hour of Glory. It's not about glory at all. It's about learning about ourselves. It's about redemption. And it's about an England which is not glorious. It's barely hanging on. It's not winning. It's just surviving. The only thing that's stopping these bombs is one man, and this one man is crippled with interior problems. It's not an army. It's not a people. It's not propaganda. It's not people standing together. It's just one guy. And that's all that stands between us and destruction. That's what this film is about. It's not about glory. To finish off, this is a very bitter film looking back, but in filmic terms it looks forward. Look at the cast. This is a magnificent film for watching new character actors coming into British cinema. Just off the top of my head, the aforementioned Michael Gough, Sid James, Robert Morley, Jack Hawkins, Cyril Cusack. Incredible. It's an incredible run of actors who are starting their careers in this film. You also have a young Freddie Francis as a camera operator, who will later on become a great cinematographer, for example, of The Innocents and The Elephant Man, and he will also become a director of many of those wonderful Amicus horror movies. So it looks forward. But when you leave this film, it's not Powell and Pressburger's greatest film. It's not. It's occasionally in its early stages, it's a bit plodding. But I admire Powell for taking the risk at trying a different kind of film, a more in-depth character study. And I think a lot of their most mature work, their most mature psychological writing and, look at character comes in this film. And so give it another try. It's well worth it. It's a very good addition to the sort of British noir cycle. And I think in the final analysis, a very beautiful film. Thanks very much.